Welcome to Digication Scholars Conversations. I'm your host, Jeff Yan. In this episode, you'll hear part 2 of my conversation with Sam Ascencio from John Jay College of Criminal Justice. More links and information about today's conversation can be found on Digication's Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Full episodes of Digication Scholars Conversations can be found on YouTube or your favorite podcast app.
You were about to hear part 2 of our conversation with Sam Ascencio from John Jay College of Criminal Justice. Please be sure to listen to our previous episode to hear part 1 of this conversation.
How did you get funding for this? Did you talk to people at John Jay and they just said, yes, this is good? Are they that nice?
I would like to say yes. For the record, they listen to this. Yes,
right. This is recorded. Yeah, right.
Yeah. So there was just no funding. It was just under our club banner. So now it's a separate thing. It's very separate. But at the time, I had found out, me and my little detective skills, that there was secretly funding for LGBT services. Because at the time, we didn't even have a center. We didn't have an LGBT center. It was the Women's Center, and that was it. So we had some queer things we could ask money for from them. So I was like, okay, I can argue them for a certain amount of money for queer events. And I was like, I might be able to jimmy them for some money. So my whole plan was if I can make a really fancy presentation that's hey, look, this works. I even had my mentors doing office hours. They were not even real hours. They just put in hours. And I was like, we're gonna make it look super official, we're getting paid, and then they'll be like, wow, this is serious, we gotta pay money. We're just gonna wow them so much they're gonna wanna pay us money. And that did not work out at all. But I was talking to we call it CECIL, which is the Center for Student Leadership and Involvement. And my cohort leader I was telling him about, his name's John, and I was like, John, do you know how I could get funding through this? And he's like, I'm not really sure. So he bumps me up to his director, who I was close with. Her name is Danielle. I was like, Danielle, I really care about this. Please, I want them to have money. They work so hard. I was crying. I was like, please give them money. And Danielle's like, stop. This is already good. I love this. And they're like, I'm gonna give them my money from my funding, make sure that they get paid. And I was like, really? And so that's what they did. They went into the funding for Center for Student Leadership and Involvement. This is that. This is what this program's meant for. This is what this department's for, and this program fits. So I handed it off to my cohort leader. I was like, keep it going. Don't ever give it up. Have it, because I don't want to run it and I'm super busy and then it falls apart. I was like, you keep this for as long as possible. And they're like, yeah. And then, it also makes it more official because now I'm not biased and paying my friends. He's doing it. But yeah, Danielle definitely, the Center for Student Leadership and Involvement believed in us, and they were like, we're going to fight for funding. And they came back a couple weeks later and they're slapping the money on the table, stipend money. They're like, bam, they're paid now. And there was a lot of stipulations, it was you have to have this CPA, you have to do this and that. And I was like, but you're getting paid to have be a queer person with queer experiences and educate others. And they had requirements. They used the same requirements that I had prior, which is you got to do one workshop a week, you got to do this. But I think I would like to say John Jay is just that nice. I mean, we're fierce advocates for justice, but I think we're also, something they don't mention is, we're also fierce advocates for education, and different types of education. So I definitely think that they believed in it. They saw how much it meant to me as a student, and they knew me very personally. They knew that this is something I fought from the heart for. And yeah.
That's an amazing story. It's unbelievable. I really do hope. I think you're right that certainly at this scale, um, there might not be many schools that has this. Although many schools probably have that hidden pocket of money somewhere that is waiting for someone to ask, and they just need to ask it the right way and get the right person, and someone has the key to it, right? um, but I must say that I've had the pleasure of getting to know several people from John Jay, and people have through Digication, and several people have run Digication, and really has been an amazing experience. It's just an extraordinary school. We actually have uh, a few, a three-part, amazing Digication Scholars Conversations with Professor Michael Yarbrough and several of his students, um, he was at the time just talking about Michael Yarbrough's experience as a professor through the sort of the COVID spring of 2020 in New York City, and people were dying and getting sick and all of that, and what he did with his students, and they did this amazing project. I recommend people go, look that up on YouTube or on but your podcast app, because it was so inspiring, and really, like, so many people I meet from John Jay has that. And I think you are absolutely right that there is a almost in addition to anything academic, it's like built into your DNA that there is a fierce passion around justice. So that's just awesome. I love that. um, can you tell me a little bit about um, can you tell me a little bit about this uh, sort of your thoughts behind, I think you had mentioned advocacy and sort of leadership. How do you rally other people to do? I mean, having now spoken to with you for a little while, I can kind of see it. But do you have some, like, do you have some do you have any insights to how you actually get people to do all these things? Because like you were saying, you're begging, you're bribing them with food, you're doing all these things, but like there's got to be some, like, there feels like there's some kind of natural charm that goes into this that makes people want to follow you.
Uh, um, I think it's just like something that I actually learned in John Jay. I was talking to the former president of John Jay, President Travis, and I asked him, what does justice mean to you? And he said something that's really changed my whole life. He said, justice is the relationship that those in power have with their community.
Hmm.
And that's something I really, really took to heart. So when it came to my advocacy, it came to what I was doing. I always had the best interest of my community. I always tell people I'm an ally first, and I want to earn the term. Like I want to earn the term ally because I have to constantly earn that title from the community I wish to serve. I wish to give me that title, so I'm going to keep fighting. I usually, when I say I'm queer, I usually say I'm a queer ally first because I want to continue to earn that title from my own community. Even if I myself am queer, I need to be able to have that intersectionality. I need to be able to listen to voices that may have experiences that I don't have. And I think definitely a lot of that was when it came to advocacy, like all of those like little bribes, all that begging was mostly secondary to the determination I had to rally these people to say like this matters, our lives matter, our voices matter, and you matter. And I think a lot of the times people think that, being a leader is being on the pedestal and yelling, but oftentimes it's actually about bringing the entire group forward and using yourself to speak with them, not for them. I think a lot of people think that, when you're elected into positions of authority, you are like the leader, therefore you must speak for them. But no, you're elected to represent in any position of
Hmm.
leadership. And they elected you because they believed in you, they believed in your views, and even if they didn't fully believed in you, they want you to do the best possible job for them. And even if you're not fully elected, if people respect you, if people look up to you, people ask you for help, it's up to you to have their best interest. You're not there to bully them, you're not there to harass them, you're not there to like put them down and say this isn't the best work. You ask these like open questions to say like, well, this is great, how can we improve it, what are you thinking, where are we going? And letting them find their own path, letting them lead their own path and guiding them is the best form of advocacy. A lot of people think it's about just pointing the way. It's not. It's about opening the doors for the people and letting them pick which door they want to go into, even if they come back a little hurt, a little scarred. You're there to comfort them and keep pushing them. And I think that's the most important part about being an advocate is knowing that you're not always going to succeed, but when you really care about your community and truly, truly love them, you're going to guide them and not just lead.
Like you are like the wisest um person that I really honestly was thinking, like, well, I will be talking to a student today, um, and not that that means, like, you wouldn't, I didn't expect, like, greatness out of you, but everything that you say is just like, it's blowing my mind. It's that's amazing Those are some really amazing insights. I mean, I'm gonna have to think about that a lot. I'm gonna listen to this afterwards too. Um, it's that's that is it's so insightful. Uh, I I wanted to, well, while we're on the subject here, I wanted to ask you about your thoughts on sort of just, you know what is what does the world look like for um, uh, young people in in your going to college, um, uh, uh, especially if you are in the LGBTQ plus sort of spectrum community. Um, because when I went to college, I felt like that it was really different. I mean, we didn't even talk about it, and I think it would be really great to get some colors, on like what is it like now, because it just feels so empowered, but it also at the same time feel like there's so much more to work on, right? So tell me your view on that.
That's such a complicated question. I think it's tough, honestly, because I do reflect back on what it was like. I think something that I read once was just like the most anti-queer thing you can do is get a doctorate or get tenure. And it's kind of true. It is kind of true because there's no funding right now. Right now my research is in you know queer research, but it's hard to find those articles. It's hard to find that research. It's hard to find
Mm,
people that are, you know, I will challenge anybody to find me a doctorate specifically for LGBT education or LGBT anything if it's not in a gender studies thing or if it's not just a subsection or just like a little hidden tab somewhere or a certificate. I would love to have that because I would love to have a PhD in LGBT studies, but right now I'm not finding any of that and it's
mm,
tough. And I think that something I've realized in my research and talking with other queer scholars is that, things are changing. I know that right now my current research is researching LGBT service provisions, specifically in the CUNY system. And what I'm learning is that there's no real kind of way to train somebody to do that. You kind of just like pick somebody and then you're like, okay, good luck.
mm,
But there's no real assessment there. There's no real assessment of like what you should be doing, how you should be doing, what's the best way. Everybody's got a different way to do it. And that's great. But when there's no hardcore assessments that we can look at and determine, we can't get that information. And that does hurt students ultimately because it has, like I said, the difference is like you can have an LGBT room with a flag in it or an LGBT room with queer mentors. You
mm,
don't know which one really is going to work for you. And obviously you're going to want one over the other, but if they're not, specifically there, then it kind of limits you because you might love one college and then not have the resources in another. That's the problem here.
mhm,
But I think it's changing. I think right now we're not where we want to be. I think something like 80% of like younger individuals and like Gen Z are like queer now. That's a lot. And I think something that somebody said to me is that we're not minorities, we're minoritized.
mm.
That doesn't
That's
mean that,
yeah. Hmm.
yeah. And so, I think that the thing is like, I am a person who wants to be trained to be an LGBT centered director. I want to be trained in LGBT work, but I have to find all these niches to get there. And it's taxing. It's kind of like going through a maze when you could easily cut through it. You don't want to go through the maze. You'd rather just get to the end, get the cheese. But that's not how that works right now. And that's the worst part, I think, right now. It's like a lot of institutions are so focused on, like, oh, we can support these minoritized groups, but they're not really doing it in a way that makes this person feel special. They're doing it in a way to say, oh, look, they're not different from anybody else. They're just like you. They're just like you, cis white male who's in college right now. Like, they're the same, you're the same, but they don't want to hear they're the same. There's a difference and you have to learn there's a difference. I think colleges are, waking up to that. It's definitely with all of the movements that are going on, like AAPI, Black Lives Matter, these queer movements that are happening. I can keep going, but these things are changing. But I think that it's not changing fast enough in the educational sphere.
Yeah.
I think that not every institution is open to having, like, for example, pronouns in their syllabi. How
Yeah.
often do you see like we will use pronouns in our syllabi here? You are open to do this. You don't always see these things, and you don't always know who's in your classroom. At least 1 in 10 students will be queer in a classroom. That's not a minority, that's a minoritized individual. I think the future is looking brighter because of, people like the people I know who want to be queer mentors, the people who want their experiences known and who want to educate others. I think it's going to get better, but I think it's just in a stagnation right now in this present moment where there's so much going on, we're not sure what direction to go in. But I
Mhm.
definitely think that the future looks bright as long as people keep
Mhm.
fighting for what they believe in.
Yeah. And I I feel like that there is a um unspoken but should be much bigger. I like what you said about, you're not the minority, you're being minoritized. And I think that there's something literally happening all the way to the curriculum level, because I find that, at John Jay, actually, because you have such a passion for justice, that it might actually you might actually be the exception there. But when I think about most education institutions, higher education institutions, you can be extremely sophisticated in math and physics, in arts, in writing, in journalism. Um, but it's almost like, when I look at people's like general education sort of goals, yeah, we want students to be critical thinkers and, good writers, good readers, etc. um, but there almost isn't this, where does justice stand, where do you find identity, how do you find some kind of passion, to life. And it doesn't mean that, you can take a course and then you'll be happy forever, but it's almost like we're not even exposed to it. Like, you don't even get it's almost like you don't, not only do you not get exposed to it, it's like it doesn't matter because it's not a card that can be played. And if you happen to have found um, someone who's like a mentor like you, or the people that mentored you or had enabled, had given you the opportunities, some of those that you mentioned before, um, and you have someone with, your level of sophistication and personality, you go in and get that. It almost feels like that the the credits, like there is not a required course for so many things, but not one that is for, like you need to figure out how you're going to be useful to this world. How do you even define that?
Yeah.
And you're kind of left on your own to figure that out.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think a lot of the times people are asking, what do you want to do with your degree instead of asking what does success look like to you?
Mhm.
I think if you sit down with yourself and say, what does success look like to you and you really think about,
Mhm.
like if it's for you it's getting a house. Okay, so how do we get to getting that house? Your whole perspective on life changes. A lot of students that I remember, I literally talked to a student, I think it was yesterday. They were like, yeah, I have a biology degree. And I was like, okay, so what does success look like to you? And they're like, well, I want to teach queer students and like I want to help them and become a doctor and like, but that's never gonna happen. And I was like, well, why can't it happen? And they're like, well, it's just not possible. I was like, but if that's what success looks like to you, then what are the steps? And they sat there and they're like, well, I could do this and that and this and this. And I was like, so why don't you invest in you? And they sat there for a while and like this person's a senior in college and they're like, oh my God, I want to change my major. I want to do something else. Like, and they were so determined to do this. I've never seen this person so happy in their whole life.
Mhm.
And I think that's it. It's just, it's asking less about asking students to complete these markers and more about asking, what's that experience like for them and what do
Mhm.
they hope to gain out of it? It's about the
Right.
hoop and the portal.
Yeah. Yeah. That's beautiful. Um, all right. So last question for me then. What does success look like to you?
That's a good one. I think for me right now, I want to come back to John Jay. I want to work in the LGBT center. That's the dream, but sometimes that feels so small, like in the really grand scheme of things. Like it's like maybe that's just what I see right now. But I think at the end of the day, I think it's really simple, but it's like I just want to make sure that at least one student out there, you know, doesn't have the experiences that I had, all the bad ones anyways. Like, I don't want them to feel that they're not wanted in high school, that, that they have to hide from their parents, that they have to hide who they are and they're trying to like struggle in these classes that they're unhappy with because the world is never going to really accept them. I don't ever want a student to sit there and, you know, just have deep pain for the rest of their life because, they couldn't find themselves and they were right there all along.
Mm.
I think success for me is just, seeing my community smile through the hardships, through the good times, and just knowing that, I think just seeing all the mentees I had graduate made me happy, and that was success. And I just want to
Mm.
see that on a grander scale. I think for connections, I would love to see it on every campus. Like, I don't even expect every single one to be the same. I expect some to be like all arts and crafts based, like, oh, we're like STEM based. Like, I want to
Right.
see creativity. I want
Right.
to see that flourish. I mean, if I could, in the grand scheme of things, I'd love to start my own company for that and just go from college to college and start like chapters and like host it and make money off the queer experience in a way that's like foundational and educational. I want to have a
Yeah.
doctorate, but I think at the end of the day, it's mostly just keep going until I stop having fun.
That is an amazing answer, by the way. And I'll tell you, this right now. Well, first of all, I don't know if anyone from John Jay will listen, like anyone that can move the needle, like from John Jay's listening to this. But if anyone is, or anyone's listening to this who knows someone who can make it happen, just please let them know that they would be so foolish to let Sam go without actually. I mean, he's saying that this is what success looks like to him. This would be a massive success for John Jay. I mean, it's not even a fair trade at all. In fact, I think that what you said about making it, imagining at a grander scale, um, to me, honestly, it almost feels like John Jay's not in a bad way. It's going to be too small for you. I think that you need to go like global. You need to go like at least national to begin with. I think you can do it. I think that it is. I think that if every campus has a connection, or whatever you ended up deciding the next logo, maybe drive a different name, is going to be. I think that's what they need. I think that the idea of um, not having another student having to go through this sense of confusion and not belonging and a sense of like thinking that they are less than who they really are. It's not only unacceptable, but it's like this is what's going to make a real dent in the universe. So I'm in full support. If there's some ways I can be helpful, please let me know. Maybe we should start some kind of connections, help you start some connections like templates or chapters, so that any schools who wants to use it can just use it. Any of the other schools that use Digication can just go ahead and do that.
That would be
Although then you'll
fantastic.
be really busy. And but John Jay, let me tell you this. Like, it's still like this is the message to John Jay administrators or whomever who can make this happen. What you need to do is to first of all get Sam to stay at John Jay to do this. To do whatever job he thinks is going to be best, and at the same time get him the PhD that he needs, at the CUNY system. I'm sure someone can, I'm sure it can be done, and he's going to work really hard at it. And the like by doing that, I think that you will um, really make the world a better place in a scale that's uh, that's really going to be worthwhile, worth doing. So hey, listen, Sam, I I hope that this will happen much sooner rather than later. But I also hope that there's going to be time for us to chat again in the future as you go through these different milestones. I hope that you be willing to come back to this again, and we can do this and sort of see where you are and how it has grown. Hopefully, by and like instead of just saying that we have like 50 something mentors getting paid at John Jay, maybe it's going to grow in ways that we can't even expect yet. But I just have little doubt that it's going to happen under your um, this just clear passion and leadership that you have, and just wow. Thank you for being the advocate for everyone.
Thank you for inviting me. And honestly, I will let you know now. I'm already working on another education, a personal one, so I'm in love with it. So you'll probably see me again because I'm probably gonna be like, I love it.
That's great, great. I have a feeling that we're going to cross path again many times.
Absolutely,
Um, all right. Thank you so much again for everything. You've been wonderful. What an amazing guest. And I really hope that we'll stay in touch.
absolutely. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Take care.
Digication Scholars Conversations is brought to you by Digication, a technology platform powering the most innovative e-portfolio programs in K-12 and higher education. Our website can be found at digication.com. This episode was produced by Drew Albanesius and Amanda Driscoll. If you enjoyed today's conversation, please like, subscribe, and share with a friend. Thanks for watching.